America in the 1970s seemed like a land of opportunity. Young people yearned for freedom, universities were overflowing with students, and life in major cities was buzzing like never before. But beneath this mask of prosperity and hope lay a horror named Ted Bundy. He was called many things: the charismatic killer, the monster with a smile, the devil in human skin. To society, he was an enigma, an intelligent, attractive, confident man who could win over any woman. But behind this facade lurked one of the most brutal and cold-blooded killers in U.S. history. It all started, as it often does, with small things. The first disappearances in the early 1970s were not yet linked. Young women, students, secretaries, sluchajni prokhoji, they vanished day and night, and no one could understand where they went. The police were at a loss. Little evidence, almost no trace. But anxiety grew, and with each passing week, more fear emerged in society. A journalist for a local publication wrote, "We are afraid to go out at night. Every woman now looks around and fears that her steps are being echoed by someone in the dark." Rules were introduced on university campuses. Girls had to return home only in groups, and parents were advised not to let their daughters out late at night. However, Ted Bundy knew how to be invisible. He used his charm, politeness, and ability to appear as an ordinary guy. His tricks were simple but effective. He would wear a cast or use a crutch, approach a girl and ask for help, to carry books, open a door, or help with a suitcase. And almost everyone agreed. No one could have imagined that a trap lay beneath. America in the 1970s lived in an atmosphere of change. Young people yearned for freedom, the streets were full of student life, and universities became centers of new ideas. But it was during this time that a man appeared in the country's northwest whose name would become a symbol of terror for decades to come. His name was Theodore Robert Bundy. To friends and colleagues, he was Ted. Charming, intelligent, confident. To society, a predator, a murderer, a monster in human form. The first disappearances, later linked to him, began in the early 1970s. Young women vanished literally in broad daylight. One didn't make it home from the library. Another disappeared on the way from university. A third from a shopping mall. Their belongings remained in place, but no bodies were found. The police were lost. Too little evidence, too much fear. Women began to be afraid to go out alone. Curfews were introduced on campuses. Newspapers published articles with headlines like, "Who is behind the series of disappearances?" But there were no answers. During this time, Bundy continued his double life. He studied law, volunteered, helped with Republican campaigns, and knew how to make an impression. No one could believe that this charming, smiling, and intelligent guy was capable of atrocities. Ted's hunting methods were simple but effective. He would use a crutch or wear a cast on his arm, feigning an injury. He would approach a girl in a parking lot or library and ask for help carrying books, opening a door, or lifting things. The girls, unaware of the trick, would agree. And then he would lure them into his car, a gray Volkswagen Beetle that would become a legendary symbol of his crimes. Inside that car, a nightmare unfolded. Bundy would stun his victim, tie her up, and drive her to secluded places, most often in the mountainous regions of Washington and Utah. There, in the shade of trees, he committed his crimes. Some bodies were found later, but many disappeared forever. The police found only bones, hair, scraps of clothing. By 1974, the number of disappearances had grown so much that society began to panic. Especially notorious was July 14th, 1974. When two girls, Janice Ott and Denise Naslund, disappeared in broad daylight in Lake Sammamish State Park in Washington. Witnesses recalled a young man in a white shirt with a broken arm who introduced himself as Ted and asked for help carrying things to his car. Many saw him, but no one stopped him. This day became a turning point. For the first time, the police had a description of the suspect and his name. However, even after this, Bundy continued to operate. He moved, changed hunting grounds. In Utah, he abducted female students directly from university parking lots. In Colorado, he abducted girls returning home in the evening. He was cautious, changed his appearance, could wear glasses, have a beard, or be clean-shaven. In December 1974, police finally arrested a suspect for a traffic violation. It was Ted Bundy. In his car, they found a mask, ropes, handcuffs, and a crowbar. It all looked like a killer's kit, but there was little evidence. Bundy smiled, assured them it was just a coincidence. He was released, but the investigation continued. In 1975, he was arrested again. This time, a witness recognized him as the man who had attacked her. Materials began to be collected against Bundy, but he was clever, knew how to defend himself in court, and prolonged the process. Most shocking was that Bundy escaped custody twice. In 1977, in Colorado, he jumped out of a courthouse library window while preparing for trial and fled. He was caught 6 days later, but later that same year, he managed to crawl through a hole in the ceiling of his cell and escaped again. This time, he went to Florida, where he committed his most brutal crimes. In January 1978, he broke into a sorority house on the campus of Florida State University. In a matter of minutes, he murdered 2 female students and brutally beat several others. Later, he abducted and murdered 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. These crimes completely shocked the country. Bundy was caught in February 1978. His Volkswagen again played a fateful role. The police stopped the car, and the driver was wanted. In court, he defended himself, smiled at journalists, tried to charm the women who came to the hearings. Some even wrote him letters, falling in love with the image of the charming killer. But there was too much evidence. Testimonies, physical evidence, fingerprints. Everything pointed to his guilt. In 1979, Ted Bundy was found guilty and sentenced to death. For decades, he remained a symbol of terror. Crowds gathered for his execution in January 1989. When the electric chair was activated, people on the streets celebrated, holding signs, "Burn, Bundy, and hell awaits you." Ted's last words were quiet. He thanked the prison guards and the priest, but never confessed to all his crimes. Officially, he was responsible for over 30 victims, but experts believe there were many more. His story still frightens America. It shows that a monster can wear a smile, study law, help in political campaigns, and yet kill in cold blood. Ted Bundy became a symbol that evil can hide in the most ordinary faces. After his arrest in 1975, Ted Bundy became a real mystery to the police. He denied everything he was accused of, but items were found in his car that could not possibly belong to an ordinary law student. A neoprene mask, ropes, handcuffs, trash bags, a crowbar. During interrogation, officers asked, "Why do you have all this, mister?" "Bundy?" He smiled as if the question was stupid. "Handcuffs?" "Well, I bought them for games with a girl. Rope for camping? Mask? Skiing? Is that a crime?" This confidence was confusing. Bundy was calm, polite, and spoke eloquently. To an unprepared person, he looked more like a victim of misunderstanding than a serial killer. Meanwhile, the investigation stalled. In various states, Washington, Oregon, Utah, Colorado, girls disappeared. But the evidence linking them to Bundy was too fragmented. Police in different states acted disorganized. Each department had its own case, its own jurisdiction. This disunity played into Bundy's hands. He moved, hunted in a new place, while investigations in another state got bogged down in guesses. Psychologists working on his case would later say he was a classic predator. He knew how to choose his victims. Young women with long, dark hair, often with a straight part. Outwardly similar to each other, as if he was looking for a specific image. This fact led experts to believe that there was a personal motive in his thirst for murder, perhaps related to early relationships. Indeed, in college, Bundy had a girlfriend named Stephanie Brooks. She was beautiful, from a wealthy family, but she left him, calling him unsuitable. For Bundy, this was a blow that he carried with him all his life. He later regained her attention when he had become confident and successful. But it was just a game. When she fell in love with him again, he coldly disappeared from her life without a word of explanation. Many believe that all his victims were a kind of substitute for the woman who once rejected him. A crucial turning point was an attack in Utah. A young woman, Carol Duranch, survived. She told police that a man approached her, introducing himself as a police officer. He said someone had tried to break into her car and offered to go with him to file a report. The girl felt something was wrong, but still got into his car. Inside, he handcuffed her, but she managed to break free and escape. Her testimony helped link Bundy to the series of disappearances. Nevertheless, he himself continued to deny everything. During interrogations, he acted as if it were a play, and he was playing the main role. He smiled, adjusted his hair, flirted with secretaries in the courthouse. His narcissism amazed even experienced investigators. When he was first tried in Colorado, he asked for permission to represent himself in court. The judge agreed, and this proved to be a fatal mistake. In one session, Bundy asked to go to the library to prepare for the case. There, left unguarded for a few minutes, he jumped out of a second-story window and fled into the woods. He was sought for a week until he was caught again. But he didn't stop. A few months later, from his cell, he escaped again by crawling through a hole in the ceiling. These escapes made him a legend even before the verdict. Newspapers wrote, "The killer with a smile is free again." Society was in a panic. Women were afraid to go out, and the police made shameful excuses. After his second escape, Bundy went to Florida. There, he committed his most brutal crimes. On the night of January 15th, 1978, he broke into the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. Armed with a club, he attacked sleeping girls. 2 were killed, and 2 more were brutally beaten, but miraculously survived. A few weeks later, he abducted 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. Her body was later found in the forest. These crimes finally put an end to doubts. America realized it was dealing with a monster. In February of the same year, the police stopped a stolen car. The driver was Ted Bundy. His face appeared in every newspaper in the country. His trial in Florida became historic. It was one of the first trials to be televised. Millions of Americans watched as a young man, in a suit and with well-groomed hair, smiled at the camera and defended himself. Some women came to court just to see him, They fell in love with his charm, even knowing he was a murderer. This phenomenon would later be called Bundy mania, a terrifying example of how evil can be captivating. Ted Bundy's trial in Florida became a real show. The courtroom was packed with journalists. Cameras filmed his every gesture, every smile. He presented his own defense, acting as a lawyer, and did so with theatrical confidence. Sometimes it seemed he enjoyed the process, as if the courtroom stage had become an arena where he could again seduce and control people. He smiled at the jury, flirted with secretaries, spoke politely and eloquently. But the evidence against him was ironclad. Fingerprints, survivor testimonies, victims' belongings found in his possession. Most terrifying were the testimonies of the girls who miraculously survived his attacks. Their trembling voices, tears, and descriptions of his brutality shocked the courtroom. A particular shock was caused by an episode during the trial when Bundy proposed to his girlfriend, Carol Ann Boone, right in the courtroom. According to Florida law, such words, spoken in front of witnesses, constituted a legally valid marriage. The woman agreed, and they became husband and wife. It seemed that even on the verge of conviction, he continued to play a game, to charm and manipulate. But manipulations did not help. In 1979, the jury found him guilty of the Florida murders. The judge delivered a historic phrase: "You are an absolute perversion of society. I sentence you to death." Bundy merely smiled slightly, as if the verdict concerned someone else. Despite this, the process continued for years. Bundy challenged decisions, filed appeals, and stalled for time. He sat on death row for almost 10 years. During this time, he became a symbol of evil for some and an object of unhealthy adoration for others. Women wrote him letters. Some came to prison hoping to see him. This phenomenon frightened society. How could one love a man who had killed dozens of young women? In his final years, Bundy gradually began to confess to his crimes. He did so sparingly, trying to buy time. In interviews, he talked about his hunting methods, about how he chose his victims. His words were cold, devoid of emotion. He spoke of his murders as if describing a trip to the store. Psychiatrists called him a perfect example of a psychopath, a person without compassion, without guilt, with a complete inability to empathize. January 22, 1989, was the day of the execution. A crowd gathered outside the prison walls. They held signs: "Burn Bundy, hell awaits you." When the electric chair was activated, people outside the fence cheered and applauded. In their eyes, it was not just a verdict for one killer. It was society's victory over the evil that had held the country in fear for decades. Bundy died silently. His last words were addressed to his family: "Give my love to my family and friends." He never revealed everything. Many disappearances are still not officially attributed to him, but experts believe his victims were far more numerous than 30, perhaps 50, and maybe more than 100. After Ted Bundy's execution, his name did not disappear with him. On the contrary, it became a symbol that America discussed for many years to come. Newspapers and television released hundreds of materials. Documentarians called him the ideal villain of the 20th century. But beneath all this media veneer remained those who truly suffered: the families of the murdered girls. Many parents never saw their daughters return. The bodies of some victims were never found. Their mothers and fathers spent decades going to the police, writing letters, demanding further investigations, hoping for at least bones or an item that would bring back memories of their child. For them, Ted Bundy was not a television figure, but a monster who took everything. Meanwhile, society discussed the phenomenon of Bundy mania. Why did people, especially women, write letters to a killer, come to prison, fall in love with his smile? Psychologists explained it as hybristophilia, a pathological attraction to criminals. But to ordinary citizens, this seemed even more terrifying than Bundy himself. For evil proved capable of charming even after exposure. The U.S. police changed their approach to investigating serial murders after this case. It was based on the experience of catching Bundy that special units, such as the Behavioral Science Unit at the FBI, were formed. They began studying the behavior of serial killers, compiling psychological profiles, and looking for patterns. The Bundy case showed that an intelligent and charismatic criminal should not be underestimated. Journalists loved to compare him to other killers, Gacy, Dahmer, Zodiac. But Bundy had his own specialty. He knew how to wear a mask of normalcy. He didn't look like a monster, didn't live in a basement with bodies, didn't leave bloody scenes. He wore a suit, read books, smiled at neighbors. This was the main horror. A monster could be your neighbor, colleague, or the guy you meet in the library. In the 1980s and 1990s, Bundy's name became a cultural code. He was discussed on talk shows, documentaries were made about him. People returned to his case again and again because his story had everything: charisma, deception, cruelty, fear, and just retribution. But even after death, Bundy left mysteries. He confessed to dozens of murders, but experts are sure that's far from all. He could have committed crimes outside the U.S. as well. In the FBI archives, there are cases where he might have been involved, but there wasn't enough evidence. Some investigators are still convinced that Bundy committed many more crimes than he admitted. After Ted Bundy's death, America did not breathe a sigh of relief. On the contrary, his shadow lingered over the country for a long time. The execution in the electric chair did not erase his memory. Instead, it raised new questions. Journalists, writers, directors, everyone wanted to dissect the phenomenon of a man who could be charming and a monster at the same time. The victims' families endured real agony. For some, he became a closed chapter, but for others, an unhealed wound. Many mothers went to the police until the end of their lives, demanding continued investigations. Not all girls were found. Their photographs hung on house walls, their names echoed in interviews. For these families, Bundy was not an icon of an era, but a murderer who took away what was most precious. Society, meanwhile, tried to understand how it could have allowed this man to operate for so many years. Newspapers wrote, "We were blinded by his smile." Bundy's friends and acquaintances gave interviews, admitting they couldn't believe his guilt. Neighbors said he was so polite. Colleagues recalled, he helped in elections, he knew how to speak beautifully. All this underlined the main fear. Evil can hide behind a mask of normalcy. The psychology of crime after the Bundy case became a separate field of science. The FBI created a unit to study the behavior of serial killers. It was based on the analysis of Bundy and others like him that the term serial killer was born. Psychologists noted his three main traits: absolute lack of empathy, pathological narcissism, ability to mimic normalcy. These qualities made him an ideal predator. He was not a mad recluse. On the contrary, he was an ordinary guy whom no one suspected. U.S. culture also did not remain the same. Books were written about him, films were made, His story turned into documentary series on Netflix, podcasts, feature films. Each time they returned to it because it remained a symbol that a monster could smile. Even decades later, his name sends a chill down the spine of those who hear it for the first time. But there were also more sinister consequences. Many researchers noted the phenomenon of women in love with the killer. Thousands of letters he received in prison proved that evil can be captivating. Psychologists called this a pathology, but society perceived it with horror. Why would women want to marry a man who killed dozens of other women? After the execution, mysteries remained. Bundy confessed to approximately 30 murders, but investigators were sure that the number of victims was much higher. There were suspicions that he had been killing since his youth, long before the official cases. Unsolved cases in which his name appeared as a possible suspect are still preserved in police archives. To this day, some of these cases remain unanswered. Modernity preserves his shadow. Every new maniac, every serial killer in the US is compared to Bundy. His image has become an archetype. He is mentioned in criminology textbooks. His interviews are studied by students. His smile remains in the chronicles. The story of Ted Bundy is not just a chronicle of crimes. It is a reminder of how dangerous a person hiding behind a mask of normalcy can be. He knew how to smile. He knew how to persuade. He knew how to appear ordinary. But beneath that face lurked a predatory essence that destroyed dozens of lives. For his victims and their families, this story was never a sensation, as it was for journalists, nor a gripping thriller, as it was for viewers. For them, it was hell, in which they lost daughters, sisters, girlfriends. Hell from which there was no escape. Bundy proved a terrible truth to the world. A monster can live next door. He can smile at you in a store, sit next to you in class, help you with papers. And that is why society must be vigilant. But along with this, his execution and confession of guilt also became a symbol of justice. Yes, evil can be intelligent, charming, and charismatic. But evil has no future. It always ends the same way. In loneliness, with a verdict, with the hatred of the entire world, which will no longer give it power. Let the story of Ted Bundy remain a lesson. Those like him have no place in this world. There should be no excuses for them, no leniency, only exposure, trial, and verdict. Because every time society closes its eyes, such monsters feel stronger. This story is finished, but its echo will resound for a long time. And if even one person becomes more attentive, more cautious after this, if even one life is saved, then the memory of the victims was not in vain.